Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Every Day is Friday. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you want to support the show, hit the link in the bio and check out our store. There is something there for everybody. Let's get into it. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Sawyer to the podcast. He is someone who's helping people build and slow down and feel better in their body, their mind, and spirit. And he just won 2 Scottish Highland Games in 6 days. Let's dive into his world. And Sawyer, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matthew. It's great to be here. It's one of those things that when you have the right mindset, anything is possible. And this, it's funny you mentioned that. This Highland Games I did yesterday, that was just kind of like for fun. The one that I did last week was a big event. It's one of the biggest in the country, actually. The Alaska Scottish Highland Games is huge. And as far as participants go, competitors, it's one of the largest. And the interesting thing about that one was I was doing it with a injury the night before the event happened. I'd just gotten bitten by a big dog right on the back of my calf. And so some people were like, and do you even want to try, competing? Because I could not walk that night. I went to bed and I used the techniques that I've learned through my training. I'm a mindset trainer. I do mindset coaching, neuro-linguistic programming, and I use those tools before I went to bed to tell my body, to give it instructions about how to heal itself and how to prepare itself. And by 10 o'clock the next morning, it happened about midnight, I got bit. By 10 o'clock the next morning, I was able to use my calf and, put pressure on it, and it wasn't all better, but it was functional. Whereas at 7 o'clock that morning, I could not put any weight on it at all. So I was able to use mindset techniques to direct my body's energy to flow into that area that was injured and to make it functional for the competition. And I ended up winning every single event that I was entered in for my division. So it's one of those, situations where if you have the proper mindset, you can really do things that most people consider to be impossible. Think about how you hear stories about, special operators, soldiers who get shot up, they're full of bullet holes, and somehow they manage to keep fighting and survive because they have that mindset. And with the proper training, anyone can have that mindset and utilize it whenever they need it. So that's just a little piece, a little way that I'm using it in the practical, just as an example that people can use it in a whole bunch of areas of their lives. And it's really exciting once you know some of the ways that you can utilize it. A whole new world opens up for you, man.
It is amazing. I mean, it shows how strong you are inside and out. I mean, what was your biggest takeaway from the Highland Games?
Well, as far as competition goes, I have more training to do. I did, even though I won every single event. That was kind of the stepping stone. I'm looking at going to nationals next, and so I have a lot of training that I need to do to get to where I'm that level competitive. But it was amazing to see using mindset techniques. I spent the last month and a half practicing for these games, and I posted really good numbers at looking at the list of world athletes. I'm in the top 50 right now, and a lot of it comes down to how you train your mind, because the mind is what controls the body, right? So if you have a mind that's disorganized, if you have a mind that can't focus, if you have a mind that jumps from thing to thing to thing and is always at the effect of whatever emotions come on it, then you're not going to be able to focus in and to create the reality that you want to see in your life, because you have all of these other things that are coming in and disturbing it and keeping you from getting where you want to go. So able to focus in and go ahead, and so even injured as I was, to place first in every single event was just a really great way of seeing how the things that I do in my normal life can be applied to all kinds of different things. So yeah, that was the biggest thing for me.
Sawyer, for me personally, I have something written on my wall behind me. It goes, "Your mind has to be stronger than your feelings."
Mm-hmm.
Do you resonate with that?
Oh yeah, 100%, man. Feelings are things that they're visitors, right? They come to us, and neurologically, the emotion can only last for about 90 seconds unless you want it to continue. And there's a lot of things that we'll probably talk about today that people should really go and research for themselves, because in the fields of neuroscience, quantum mechanics, and psychology, neuro-linguistic programming, all of those things, there's this nexus that's forming where they are all so closely interconnected that it's no longer theory. Everything that we've been talking about over the last 20 years in those fields, how the mind controls the body, how we can reshape our future, how we can create futures, how we can create our present reality and shape it the way we want to. All of that is now demonstratable from a scientific perspective. Those things are finally coming to the forefront of human consciousness in a big way, and especially in the scientific communities. You've got people like Dr. Joseph Spiegel. He's a professor at Stanford, a psychologist. He recently said that if hypnosis were a pharmaceutical, it would be the standard of care for all ailments. That should be the starting point. This is a psychology professor. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in the fields of psychology and hypnosis and NLP, there's been a pretty stark division for the last 200 years or so. Sigmund Freud kind of brought that in. He studied at the Nazi school of hypnosis, but he didn't practice it himself. He created the modern idea of psychology. He created the principles of psychology and the talking patient model. And for the next 200 years or so, that just kind of bifurcated. Those two disciplines split apart and followed very different paths. And it's only been in the last 10 years or so where big name psychologists are starting to kind of, extend the hand back across the aisle and recognize that we're all working towards the same goal, and everyone has a lot of really important pieces to bring to the solution puzzle. So that's kind of where we're at in that field. And once you see those things and recognize that, you've got all of this, great information, and there's so many things that are being able to be demonstrated, as I said before, demonstrated in the scientific. They can do studies now. Neuroscience is really, really amazing. Like they're doing tons of studies on how behaviors affect people. When you're talking about what you do, how you feel affects what you do. But they did a study on rats where you've got this rat and they send it through a maze, and they shock the rat at a certain point in the maze, give it an electric shock, and they had it go through the maze. And so of course the rat had a reaction to the shock, right? So they bred this rat with other rats, and they made the rat babies go through the maze, but they didn't shock it. They didn't shock the baby when they went through the maze, but the baby still had the emotional reaction as if it had been shocked. And they did this with 4 generations of rats. Only the parent rats had been shocked. All the other subsequent generations were not shocked, but still had the same emotional reaction. So from that, we learned that emotions can be transferred generationally, right? Parents pass emotions down to their children. So we have that influence, but we also know that we can change those behaviors. We can shift our reality by understanding what's happening to us in the moment and choosing to believe something else. We have 11 million bits of information coming into our senses, our 5 senses, every second, okay? That's quite a few, right? How many of those do you think we actually get to keep? Just to throw out a number here. Best guess.
10,000?
Nope. 126, 128. That's it. We have so little of because we have 2 parts, right? We have an unconscious and a conscious mind. Sigmund Freud did a ton of really great work when he's talking about things like the shadow, and I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of his work or not, but he basically, the psyche is the part of the mind that is unconscious, and we have about 95% of our mind that is unconscious, and that's what drives all of our behaviors and all of the things that we're not consciously thinking about, right? We do things all day long that we don't think about. We just do them because our conscious mind isn't the one controlling our actions. The unconscious part of our mind is. So it's kind of like the autopilot or the cruise control for our body and for our functions. So the things that we do get automated. And so you can get in a car and you can drive somewhere that you've been 100 times before. And you get there and you look around and you go, man, I don't remember that drive at all. Like I have no conscious memory of having just driven that distance because you were doing it with your unconscious mind. And all of this is connected together because you've got basically all hypnosis is accessing the unconscious part of your mind and putting it into control rather than the conscious part. So just like if you're driving along and something were to happen, a car were to pull out in front of you, your unconscious mind would give control back to your conscious mind because it doesn't have a preset set of actions for that, right? You become aware of what's going on and you would take corrective action. Same thing is true in hypnosis. You if something were to occur, or someone were to say something to you that didn't connect, didn't jive, didn't agree with your model of the world and your beliefs, your conscious mind would come back in and say, well, hold on now, we're not okay with that. So you can use, once you become aware of these tools, you can use them to change those behaviors, right? So you have habits that you form, and those are the domain of the unconscious mind. That's how you do all of the things that you do, because you don't have the physiological capacity in your conscious mind to hold more than a few things at once. All the other things have to be automated so that you do them without thinking. And so you can create different patterns that cause you to do things without having to think about them. So you've got willpower, and you've got what we call meta programs in NLP. You can change those programs to make you do things that you want to do automatically, rather than having to try and force yourself into it. Does that make sense?
You heard of athletes actually getting hypnotized, like Jake Paul before boxing and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
You know about that type of stuff for athletes. Do they do it a lot?
Yeah. Jake Paul, Conor McGregor, like 80% of all Olympic athletes use hypnosis to improve their performance. Eddie Hall, you familiar with him? World's strongest man. He has a great interview. Go on YouTube and look it up, where he talks about specifically about how he used hypnosis to do the 500 kilogram deadlift, which at the time was 37 pounds more than the than the last record. He'd been going up a couple of pounds, or a couple of kilograms, whatever, every meet every year, and he broke the record by 37. He was working with a hypnotherapist for several months prior to that lift, and they did some special technique called anchoring, which is really cool and can be really, really beneficial, where he basically, you set a switch in your body, and you flick that switch to go into a specific state, a desired state, right? So to clarify that a little bit, we have emotional states, right? You can feel the emotional state of happiness, you can feel the emotional state of excitement or sadness or whatever. Once you understand how to use tools like hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming, you can create those states and you can access them at will, just like clicking on a program on your computer screen, right? You do the old double click on the mouse, or you take your smartphone and touch on the app, and you open up the app, and boom, that's where you're at. Same thing with your body. Your body is programmable, just like a computer. So he used that technique to create a program where he was in a life or death situation. Basically, he visualized lifting a car off of his family, and so he goes up and he does the lift. And if you watch some of his other videos, like his other record-breaking videos, the guy, he's struggling, right? The weight is massive. Nobody else in the world is lifting this much. That's how you get to be the strongest in the world, right? But for that lift, he just like wrenches it off the ground. It did not look like he was doing a world record lift, because he used his anchor, and he had done all this hypnosis work beforehand to prepare his mind. So when he went in and did that, he wasn't lifting a weight for the world record. He was lifting a vehicle off his family to save them. And so he went right into the state that he needed to be in to access, basically everything physiologically in his body that he needed to access in that moment. And he did the lift, and it looks like an easy lift. And so he talks about that. It's one of those things that is kind of like the best kept secret. CEOs, Fortune 500 guys, everybody at the top of their game is using tools like hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming to improve themselves. But they don't talk about it because it's, like I said, it's kind of like the best kept secret, because it works really well, and it gives everyone who uses it a competitive edge.
Do you need someone else to hypnotize you to become the person you want to become? Can you do it yourself?
I would say that there are two aspects there. One, you can talk yourself into your success without any knowledge or training, but you do need to know what languaging to use in order to make that self-talk effective. Okay? So here's the secret. We are all hypnotizing ourselves every day, either to our success or to our failure. That self-hypnosis is our self-talk, the thoughts that we have inside. That's us talking to ourselves. And the mind creates the belief, and then the body gives you evidence to support it. We are just a biofeedback machine. So we say what we believe, and then our unconscious mind creates behaviors that show us, or creates filters for those 11 million bits of information. Remember, we've got 126 bits that we get to keep, right? So the question is this true or not, becomes functionally irrelevant, because you're not getting, you're never going to get a massive amount of that information. You're getting a tiny, tiny little sliver, right? So if you start with that understanding, okay, whatever I see, whatever I believe, whether it's true or not is irrelevant, because I'm not getting enough to matter, right? I'm not getting enough to get the big picture, to get the whole understanding. And my perspective is just one spot in time and space. There's all of these other perspectives, right? Because that's how you get people, 8 different witnesses giving you 8 different stories about something that happened. They can only tell it from their perspective. And their perspective has all of these filters about which bits of information to keep and which to throw away that they have pre-created in their minds, right? That's something that you build over time. So you could have some person standing in the exact same spot as another person and see something completely different because they have different filters. So you can only keep 126 bits, right? So you take those 11 million bits and you create filters that determine which ones you keep. Now, when you change the filters, you change the information. So you change your reality. You change what you perceive to be true because you're getting different bits of information than you did before. Is that making sense?
Yes, it is. And a lot of people don't have this knowledge. Why is it not openly shared?
It's funny you asked that question. That is exactly the question that I had when I first discovered this. I learned about hypnosis through a very roundabout way. I saw an ad on Facebook, right? And prior to that, I didn't have any knowledge of hypnosis at all. A lot of people have TV knowledge of hypnosis. They've seen a movie or a TV show that has someone who practices hypnosis in it, and that person is usually portrayed as bad or using it for their own selfish ends and controlling people to do what they want. Well, that's not real hypnosis. That doesn't actually happen. Like we were talking about earlier, if I make a suggestion to you when you're in hypnosis that doesn't square with your worldview, as in, you have a set of values. Beneath your programs, there are values. They're like the bottom layer of your unconscious mind. And everything that you do is a result of those values that you hold deep down inside. And if someone tells you to do something that is outside of those values, you're not going to do it. It doesn't matter whether your conscious mind is there at the moment. Your unconscious mind is going to say, nope, this does not compute. It doesn't jive with the programming that we've got. So if I'm in, doing hypnosis with you, you're in hypnosis, and I say, okay, when you come out of this session, you're going to go rob 3 banks for me. You're going to bring the money back to me. If you're not a bank robber, that's not in your value system. So you'll probably just wake up, open your eyes and go, what? No, I'm not. Because you can't be forced to do something that is outside of your values. So hypnosis for me was totally unknown. I didn't know even that much. But I saw this video that talked about a concept called the energy cube, and this is Reg Malhotra with Neuromasters Academy. That's where I actually ended up going to school and getting my practitioner certifications from. He explained this concept called the energy cube. Essentially, it's a concept where you have a body, right? You have physiological body, and you have physiological emotions. And in neuroscience, you can see the neurochemicals going and traveling through your brain to send you signals to tell you what emotions you're feeling, right? Well, now we're starting to understand that the fascial tissue, which for a long time in Western medical science was not really understood, is actually part of its job is to transfer those emotions physically through your body to different parts of your body. That's why when you think about, memories that you've had in the past where you were feeling fear or something like that, you could feel it moving up through your body or down through your body to specific parts, right? The emotions you feel aren't always in the same spot. They aren't localized. They move around. So you have a transfer system for emotions. You also have a storage system. And so the energy cube concept is essentially that you have a storage capacity, and you get things called significant emotional events that you accumulate throughout your life. And that a significant emotional event is basically something that happened that because of the filters that you had, you experienced in a negative way, and you created a negative belief about the experience. And as a result of that, you hold that emotional experience neurologically alive in your body. If you can remember something, go back in time and remember it, and feel the emotion that you felt in the moment, then that emotion is still alive for you, and at your unconscious level, it's still happening. right now.
Hello, everybody. Back at it like we never left. We had to stop the podcast because Sawyer lost power during the recording, but the podcast must go on. We were just getting into something really powerful, hypnosis, and how it's helping athletes, business leaders, and everyday people level up. Let's get right back into it. Picking up where we just left off, Sawyer, how are you doing?
Outstanding, yeah. So we were just talking about the significant emotional events and the way that they are held inside of our body, right? And how the neurology that we have when we're born and when we're young doesn't allow us to recognize the difference between other people's emotions and ours. So we pick them up and we accept them as our own. And we have these significant emotional events that occur throughout our life. And those are things that we experience negatively and then hold inside of our bodies as though they're still happening. And so the whole energy cube concept basically says you've got all of these that stack up over time, right? You've got something that happened when you were little, something happened when you were older. All these things over time build up to the point where we have no more capacity to hold emotions that are alive physically, neurologically inside of our body. Just like a computer runs out of RAM or memory and then it slows down and it doesn't work right. You have a physiological capacity because your body is only so big. You only have so much tissue in which to store these emotions. So at that point, you get problems like explosions of anger, outbursts of tears that seem to come out of nowhere. It's because the body is no longer able to store new emotions because it's at peak capacity. So that was what sparked my journey was learning that and understanding that. And there's a book out now that you guys can check out. It's called The Energy Cube Secret by Reg Malhotra. Really, really great book. Dives into that aspect of understanding, and it goes through different areas of your life where those things apply. So that's a really good resource that I highly recommend.
Now, Sawyer, how do you tap into this cube?
So there's, back to what we were talking about a little bit ago, basically to answer your question, right? You're always hypnotizing yourself either to your success or to failure. And the problem is that most people are completely unconscious of the effect of their words on themselves. And what we know now from neuroscience and from the quantum studies into quantum mechanics is that your words literally create reality. You can affect physical matter with nothing more than your spoken word. There's a great body of work by Dr. Masaru Emoto, who was a Japanese researcher into vibrations and frequencies and how the sound that a human makes can affect the physical reality. It can affect the physical world around them. And when you combine what he researched with understanding how specifically how our words affect water, with the knowledge that our bodies are mostly made of water, and the way that you can imprint water with your words, it becomes very obvious that we are always talking truth to ourselves. And whatever that truth is what we will see evidence for show up in our lives. Everybody who says things like, oh, I feel so old, I'm getting so old, or man, I'm always broke. Those are commands of belief to your unconscious mind. So you're hypnotizing yourself into believing those things. And whatever you choose to believe, your unconscious mind will create filters, going back to those 126 bits that you get to keep. It's going to create filters that reflect that reality of that belief. So you'll start seeing more and more areas in which you're lacking if you're always telling yourself that you're broke. You'll start feeling more and more pains coming up all the time if you're telling yourself, oh, I feel so old, or I'm just tired all the time. Those things create your reality. So the first step is to become consciously aware of the stories that you're telling yourself, of the beliefs that you're choosing to have, and make a conscious decision to change them. To start saying, every time you would have said, oh, I feel this way, or I am this way. You know what? Up till now, or in the past, I used to feel that way. And I know that it's going to get better from here. Start changing the script. Start changing the way that you talk to yourself and about what you feel or believe. And then evidence for that will start to show up in your life. So that's the first step. The second step that I took and that I recommend is educating yourself. I've spent a lot of money doing specific trainings that teach me neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis techniques and skills, because there's a whole body of work that's been done pioneers have been in this field for almost 100 years now that have been creating a specific pattern of and sequence of techniques that can unlock those things that we're not consciously aware of and can basically hack through the conscious level of willpower, go straight into the unconscious mind, and make those changes immediately. This is something that Reg Malhotra has quoted, so I'm going to quote him here. He says there's three ways to approach life. Some people like to use the guesswork way, and you just kind of guess your way through, and sometimes that works because sometimes you guess right. And a lot of people spend their whole lives using that method of working. They guess and reach out blindly and hope that they get the answers that they need. The second way is to utilize hard work, which is what a lot of people do, and that has its place. It's very important to be able to work hard when you need to. And that would be the area of, say, willpower, right? Using your will, your conscious mind, to control your unconscious mind is a very hard thing to do. It requires a lot of willpower because since 95% of your mind is unconscious, the 5% has a lot of work to do to take back those filters and to change them. So that's the two ways that most people work through life. What I prefer is something called frameworks, which is where you change the perspective of the thing that you're trying to address so that it becomes natural and automatic for you. So using hypnosis, you can change the frameworks that your mind operates on. You can go straight into the unconscious mind and give it specific suggestions about what to believe that replace the suggestions that you've been unaware, I should say. Differentiate between unconsciousness and lack of awareness in this case. You've been consciously but unawarely making those suggestions to yourself, right, all this time. You go in and you use hypnosis to change those patterns of belief, and that automatically causes your unconscious mind to create new filters, which then cause you to see new things, which then reinforce those new beliefs. Does that make sense?
Now, Sawyer, why do you think hypnosis works so well for athletes and business CEOs?
Well, I would say it's essentially because when you biohack the mind, you have people, especially people who are already focused, who have a high degree of focus, right? Because you don't become an Olympic athlete, you don't become a CEO by having a generally cluttered and scattered mind, right? It requires a great deal of ability and of, I wouldn't say natural ability, but they've worked at something for a long time. They've probably used hard work for a long time to create better mental images and better mentalities about themselves and about what they're capable of, right? Let me just do a quick test with you. Can you just, for a moment, close your eyes and imagine yourself as the head of a multi-billion-dollar corporation? You just close your eyes and see yourself there. You're the head of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Now, you've got literally hundreds of millions of dollars you're responsible for every day. As you think about being that person and doing that thing, do you feel any resistance anywhere in your body?
I do not.
Good. Okay. So that means that neurologically, you have the capacity to do that now. You may not have the knowledge and the skills, but you have the mentality that would allow you to operate in that role. Does that make sense? A lot of people don't. And one of the ways that you can figure out why you're not getting what you want right now is to just close your eyes and imagine yourself in 6 months magically having whatever it is you say you want, and notice if you feel any resistance anywhere in your body. If you do, that's an indication that a part of you doesn't believe that you can have it or that you deserve to have it. And so that's where you go in and use hypnosis or NLP and find out what's really going on, what's really holding you back there. And those are processes that you can do really quickly if you have the tools and techniques to do them with. So it works with CEOs and Olympic athletes because they already have that basis. They've already done a ton of work. And what I've noticed is that they're very receptive. They're very interested in getting the most done in the shortest amount of time possible, right? That's kind of what they have to do. That's the mentality they have to have in order to get to that point. And so they are very open to hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming because they see how fast it works. And CEOs time is very, very valuable. They don't have time to go to a therapist and, talk about their problems for hours and days, weeks, months, years on end. They need to get the problem solved now. And that's where hypnosis is especially valuable for them, because they can solve the problem immediately and then go on about their business.
Sawyer, what's a real success story you've seen from someone using hypnosis?
Well, probably this is a real success story that I've personally seen was one that I helped a person with just a few months ago. She was taking a class on NLP specifically that I was helping to coach for. And she had a problem that she'd had for a very, very long time, which was she was partially deaf. She was deaf in one ear, and she'd been to doctors, and at that point she was thinking about getting a cochlear implant because the doctors said that was the only way that she could restore her hearing on one side. And I listened to her and let her talk a little bit and got some information about herself. And I actually used something called timeline therapy, which is created by Tad James, very, very, very influential in the NLP world. And I took her through a process. I put her into a trance, a light trance, and took her through a process where I got her to visualize herself in the future with perfect hearing. And then I took her all the way back into the present, and I was able to bring that hearing loss that she had. I was able to remove that and bring her perfect hearing from her imagined future into the present. It took like 20 minutes, and she restored her hearing completely in that ear. That was probably my proudest moment to date, because it was able to take something that someone, that the doctors had all told her couldn't be done. There was no way to fix it. She needed to get this thing. But what we believe from my modality's perspective is that the body has the blueprint for its perfect health. And the cause of virtually all chronic problems, and that would be any problem that persists for more than about 6 weeks, because that's 6 to 8 weeks is really the longest the body should need to heal itself. Any problem that persists for longer than that is because there is something emotionally that has not been released yet. So we start from the assumption that the problem that presents physically is only presenting physically because it was unaddressed emotionally for enough time that it began to manifest in the physical. So we take that information and then we find the emotional problems that have not been addressed. And what we see is a lot of times in addressing those emotional problems, the physical symptoms will go away. And I have a friend who, this is to answer your question in a different way. I have a friend who I know personally who he was able to let go of terminal cancer. The doctors gave him a few months to live. I don't remember exactly. It was like maybe 4 to 8 months, 18 months I think was his life. He was like terminal. They said, you have 18 months to live, put your affairs in order, you're not coming back from this. After that diagnosis, he discovered hypnosis and NLP, and he went through a total transformation. And within months, the doctors admitted that his cancer was in full remission, as healthy as he's ever been today. At that point in his life, he was like 300 pounds, and he was very unhealthy. And now he's in one of the healthiest stages of his life. So those major problems can be resolved through releasing the emotional underpinnings that are causing them to come up. And that's what I would say to your question of what's the most important. Those are major health problems, right? If it can do that for something as major and, as we're told, terminal as cancer, what can it do for you just in your daily performance and the way that you are able to show up every day for yourself and for others?
So your common thing that people say is hypnotism is for the weak-minded. I mean, what would you say to someone who's scared of being hypnotized?
So that is a totally common thing. I absolutely agree with you. And what I would say to that is, again, we're always hypnotizing ourselves, either to our success or our failure. I think a lot of people have fear, right, about losing control. And one of the simplest ways that I can demonstrate that is to show them and do that with you. If you want, we'll just do a real quick one. So just go ahead and close your eyes for me. And just take a nice deep breath in through your nose and breathe out. That's it. Relax every muscle in your body, all the way from the top of your head down to the tips of your toes. Gently relax. That's right, Matthew. Nice deep breath in again and out. And this time let go of all of the stress that you're feeling, all the worries that you have right now. Now, you are in hypnosis. Anything that I suggest to you that is inside of your value system, you will be able to accept. Anything that is outside of that value system, you will naturally reject. So, right now, just continue to relax and breathe. And with every breath in and out that you take, allow yourself to become even more and more relaxed. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and tell me how good you feel.
I feel really relaxed.
That's what hypnosis is. When we do hypnosis, all it is a progressive relaxation to the point where you can allow suggestions that I make to you to go directly to the unconscious mind and begin to work. Now, if I were to say to you when you're in hypnosis, okay, Matthew, now what I want for you to do is to jump up and stand on your head and sing a song in Japanese. If that's not inside of your value system, then you would not do it. You know, so you think about, have you ever seen a stage show hypnosis?
I have.
Okay, so those are real hypnosises. Those are real hypnotists. They are very specifically trained to identify people whose value system includes being seen. Okay, so the people who get up there and who do those things are doing them willingly. They're not doing anything
because
that's
what I
outside
realized
of
when I watch someone, he asked them to raise their hand. Who wants to be hypnotized?
Exactly. The first step is to get ascension, right? He doesn't take people out of the audience who say, no, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be on stage. In fact, if you watch, they'll do tests with their subjects on the stage. And if they fail the test, then they get off the stage. They say, nope, I can't do it with you because you're not going to listen to my instructions. Everyone is hypnotized to the degree to which they're willing to be. And so for those people who are afraid of what will happen in hypnosis, the simple fact of the matter is, if you don't want something to happen, if you're afraid of what's going to happen, then you're going to struggle with it, right? And ironically, oftentimes the people who are most skeptical about it are the easiest to do hypnosis with, because it's that barrier between the conscious and the unconscious mind that we're lowering so that you can make suggestions to the unconscious. But again, only suggestions that are in harmony with your values, which are at the deepest level of your unconscious, only those suggestions will be accepted by the unconscious mind. So essentially, we can only make suggestions to the unconscious mind that it's willing to accept. And so you can do hypnosis, and really hypnosis itself is, as a word, as a term, I should say, is a misnomer. We've had it for a couple of hundred years because the original, I think it was James Braid was the creator of the word. He came up with it after watching people do a technique where they would bring someone up on the stage, and then they would have them lay down on a couch or whatever, and they would look back like this, and the person would be standing at their head. And so the person that was laying on the couch, the subject, would be looking up at the practitioner behind them, and they would make suggestions to them on the stage. And hypnosis is a term that really doesn't describe what's going on in our modality, because really what it is a single thought, a focus on one specific thing. And so you can hypnotize yourself by focusing on something. If you stare at yourself in the mirror long enough, if you look yourself in the eye in the mirror, you will become hypnotized just from doing that. You'll notice, you'll go from a state where you're looking at everything to all of a sudden everything else kind of becomes blurry around you. Boom, you're in trance. It's that simple. It's that easy. And it happens that often.
One of the keys is to get rid of the clutter in your mind.
Exactly. Because when you have all of these things that are taking up space neurologically, you have trouble going to where you want to go when you want to go there. Mentally, emotionally, it's like driving through an obstacle course, except the obstacles are 3D and you have to drive over them as well as around them. So you've got all of these things in your way, blocking you from getting where you want to go. And so doing hypnosis, essentially, hypnosis is the same as guided meditation. And guided meditation is something that has gotten really popular in the last few years. You're doing the same thing. You're in the same state. Basically, you're just relaxing the body, relaxing the mind, and then making positive suggestions for your success.
Now, Sawyer, what's the biggest lesson NLP has taught you about how people think?
I would say the biggest lesson NLP has taught me about how people think is that most people are completely unaware of how they think. They are unaware of how they talk and of how their words affect them. And armed with that knowledge, once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's everywhere. Once you become aware of the way that people speak unconsciously, your understanding of where they're coming from, like I can a lot of times listen to someone speak, and within a few minutes of talking to them, I have a very good understanding of the problems that they have had since childhood, the struggles that they have dealt with, because I can hear it in their unconscious language, because we're always saying things unconsciously that relate back to something that we're still holding neurologically inside of us. So that's been the biggest takeaway for me is becoming aware of my speech, how I talk to myself, and recognizing how others talk to themselves. Because once you do, then you can start making little suggestions to the people around you. Say, hey, this is a negative way of speaking to yourself. You can talk about yourself this way instead. And people don't know what they don't know, right? There's known knowns. I know that I'm talking to you right now. There's known unknowns. I have no idea how tall you are. Okay? There's unknown knowns. There are things that I know that I don't consciously know I know. And then there's unknown unknowns. There's things that I don't know that I don't know. And most people are living in a state of unknown unknowns when it comes to their mind, their emotions, and how they talk to themselves and about themselves. And
with the words they use.
With the words that they use. So going from that state of not knowing what you don't know about the way that you talk to yourself about yourself and the way that you allow others to talk to you or accept the things that they say about you, to being aware of those things in real time and being able to make decisions consciously about whether you want to accept those suggestions or not has been incredibly valuable to me.
And Sawyer, I remember someone telling me once before, the words you use are so powerful. It's like casting a spell every time you use a word. That's why they call it spelling.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's going into the quantum realm like you're speaking of.
100%. There's actually little antenna on our DNA. They just identify these. There's 3 different sizes of antenna on each DNA strand that we have in our body. And they are for receiving or sending different wavelengths of vibrations. We are attuned at the smallest level, at the level of our DNA. We are attuned to energy, frequency, and vibration. We literally have the physiological structures to interact with not just the physical, but with the quantum realm. And so those suggestions that we make are being absorbed by us, by our bodies at the deepest levels. And the suggestions that other people make around us, if we accept them, are being absorbed. And so those can become very, very powerful, especially early in life. If you ever hear someone else's voice when you would go and do something or want to do something, you hear someone else's voice and you don't do that thing, that's because you've accepted the belief of someone else as your own. And if you hear that and you recognize whose voice it is, you can then start to do the work of saying, do I want to accept this belief? Do I want to continue to carry this belief that I've had all this time? Or do I want to let it go because it no longer serves my greatest good?
That's something most people don't even think about.
It's true. Like I said, most of the things that we have inside of us that we carry, our beliefs, they are unconscious to us. Because here's the thing, from a psychological perspective, most beliefs about the self are created within the first 7 years of life. So you can develop new ones along the way, but those core beliefs are cemented in there within the first 7 years, 8 years at the most. So everything from that point on, everything that you experience is experienced from the lens of those beliefs. And so you've got a child mind, right, that creates these beliefs about the self. You grow up and become an adult. Most adults are still operating with those same beliefs, with that same set of belief patterns. Even though they have a mind now that can think critically, it cannot think more critically than the values that it had before that ability came in, because that was the operating system that it is based on. So everything that I've learned about hypnosis and NLP, I've used to go back and reprogram the operating system to change those beliefs as I become aware of them. And it's an ongoing process, right? We never fully arrive, but we can always make progress. We can always become more and more aware of ourselves and of the things that are either motivating us or holding us back. And we can decide when we become aware of them, do I want to keep this, or do I want to let that go and choose a new belief that serves me better?
So everything we're saying, the words we're listening to and the music we're listening to, I mean, how can the sound and vibration help the body heal?
Well, from a healing perspective, just as we are constantly making suggestions with our words, right? We can literally talk our way into healing. We can speak our way into healing. But there are a number of specific frequencies that have been identified as more beneficial, and a number of frequencies that have been identified as harmful to the body physiologically, that create either cellular growth, healthy growth, or cellular decay. So if you go all the way to the base of the cell, the edge of the cell is rimmed with ions, negative and positive. The more positive ions you have build up around the cell wall, the worse it is for the cell. Negative in this case is bad. Negative. Positively charged ions are a bad thing, because they prevent the cell from communicating with the other cells and from offloading toxins and things like that. So negative ions are a great thing. And what we have seen from cymatics, which is the study of sound vibration and how it affects our reality, and especially in relation to our bodies, is that certain frequencies, like 962 hertz, create a healing effect on the body. They provide a change physiologically. They change the cellular structure, and they convert positive ions to negative ions. They change, just through sound waves alone, change the way that the cells operate. And so you've got physical ways of doing that, things like earthing and grounding. The earth has a negative charge, and so by contacting the earth, by sticking your fingers in the ground, by using things like grounding sheets, or they make grounding shoes now even, your body, because every cell in your body is conductive, it conducts electricity, it will drop all those positive ions and rebalance itself. That automatically puts your cellular structure in a better state where it can regenerate, heal itself, and produce new healthy cells. And you can do the same thing with sound healing frequencies. This is something that things like Chinese medicine go back thousands of years doing, and only now in the last few years has Western science caught up to the point where they recognize, oh, this is actually working. And the sound as healing idea has been around in the West here for probably at least 100 years. Tesla was the first one. Nikola Tesla was the first one to experiment with that and to say, hey, we can change things using sound vibrations. So to more specifically answer your question, when it comes to things like music, it becomes very, very critical when you realize that some music has a sound frequency that is actually damaging to your cellular structure and will cause your body to get, first of all, you've got cortisol, which is your stress hormone. It will elevate your levels of cortisol, and while cortisol is elevated, you can't rest. Your body cannot rest and regenerate itself. When it's in that stress response, it is primed for fight or flight. It's primed to react quickly to whatever threat it may perceive, whatever you need to escape from, whatever you need to fight. That music that causes that elevated cortisol will continue to do that. So whenever you're listening to it, you get put into that state. And the longer you stay in that state, the less time your body has to recover. And so just in a general sense, when it comes to our bodies and recovery, what we really need to start thinking about is whether it's food, music, a person, is this putting my body into a heightened cortisol state? Do I feel stressed when I'm listening to this, or listening to this person, or eating this food? Does it cause me to feel better, or does it cause me to feel depressed, in the immuno response sense? And if the answer is that it has a negative effect, then you should avoid those things because they're creating a problem for you physiologically, which you have to recover from. If you don't, then you end up with physiological ailments. So over time, you've got a buildup of things that can happen if you're listening to specific types of music. This is something that I really didn't understand thoroughly, like the whys behind it for a long time. But like I was raised to kind of avoid things like heavy rock and roll and things like that for very different reasons. But from a vibrational standpoint, the frequencies that those sounds vibrate at and the way that they clash with each other, the frequencies have a negative impact overall on the body and the body's health. There's on the flip side of that, there's what we call the law of attraction, which I'm sure you've heard of. But from a frequency standpoint, there's a law that says that when two frequencies of equal wavelength meet, the size of the frequency doubles. That's in the law of physics. That's the law of attraction. So you've got two frequencies vibrating at 5,000 hertz. When they meet each other, they jump to 10,000. Now, the flip side of that is if their polarity is reversed, when they contact each other, they drop to zero. So when you look at what specific types of music do, some of them are creating frequencies just like that are, when they meet, when you hear them come in, when the sound comes into your ears, they're dropping from whatever frequency they're vibrating at zero. And from a physiological perspective, your body is vibrating at, as a healthy human, your body is vibrating at no less than 70 hertz. The lower you go, the more health problems you get. And if your body drops down to 15 hertz, science, as far as it knows, cannot help you to recover. Basically, if you drop to 15 hertz, it's straight down to the bottom. It's straight to zero from there. So the things that you vibrate with, that you resonate with, can be beneficial or not. Everything from the clothes that you wear to the food that you eat. Things like polyester, that's one of the absolute worst when it comes to vibrational frequencies, because it vibrates somewhere between 15 and 30 hertz. It's very, very low vibrational fabric. And since everything is always emitting these vibrational frequencies, when you wear specifically synthetic fabrics, you're constantly bombarding your body with lower vibrational frequencies. So one of the things that the so-called hippie movement did really well was recognize that we need to get back to natural things like wool, because wool vibrates at 5,000 hertz. So when you wear wool, you're constantly energizing your body. You're constantly giving it more energy, and you're helping to raise its frequency, right? You're supporting your body's frequency. When you wear things that are made out of synthetics, rayon, nylon, all of those things are really, really low vibrational fabrics. Those are causing your body to fight to maintain its frequency. So you're either positively or negatively affecting your body with everything that you put into it and on it. Same thing with food, right? You've got high frequency foods and low frequency foods. And that's not talking about, what can be poisonous to you or not poisonous to you. That's just, talking about the frequency that it brings. So you've got a multi-layered process there when it comes to your overall health and well-being. It starts with the mind. You make the changes in your mind, and then those changes become manifested in the physical. You notice your body changing. And we can do things with hypnosis like weight loss, quit smoking, things that are habits for us. We can change those habits and watch in real time as the change in belief creates a change in reality. And so you can take a person who's been smoking for 30 years, stop smoking hypnosis with them, and they're done with cigarettes. That's it. No more. Just like that. A 30-minute session, hour-long session, whatever, is all it can take for someone to just let go of that habit and never have that desire again. So, go ahead.
When people are at concerts or sporting events and they're releasing their vibration out into the quantum field, so they can connect with each other, and the energy is just electric sometimes at some of these events. Is that what's happening?
Yes. So you've got a biosphere. You have a electrical field and a magnetic field that you're always emanating, right? And science, I think we can now measure it up to about 15 feet. It used to be like 8 feet, but sensitivity wise, we can measure it out to that distance, right? Here's the thing. When it comes to emotions, you can transfer them like a quote unquote virus, like a computer virus, right? Computer virus uploads to the internet, and anybody who clicks on it, boop, okay. You can do the same thing. You can walk into a room And you can take someone who is really, really high energy. They can go into a room where the energy is sort of static, at a median level, and electrify that room with their energy. They can transfer it from person to person to person, just energetically. Like you say, you're contacting through the quantum, you're vibrating at those frequencies. The antenna on your DNA are receiving that energetic signature, and it is changing the way that you feel. And you can do the same thing with someone who has problems, fear. Especially, all negative emotions are rooted in fear. And so you can take one person who is feeling anxious and have them walk into a room that has a static emotional state, and the fear can rip through that room just like the emotion of excitement or energetic. Next thing you know, other people are feeling anxious and they have no idea why. And you can experience this when you're walking through crowds sometimes. You just get this random feeling out of nowhere. Like you say, you go to a concert and everything in the concert is designed to create a specific energetic state. And so, most of that is specifically designed to elicit certain emotions. Basically, they're creating neurochemical dumps of a specific type because they want you to feel a certain way when you go to the concert.
Now, does it work the other way as well? I mean, why do you think so many people are feeling tired and lost today? Do they get attracted by that?
Yes. So from the quantum perspective, you are always attracting the frequency that you're vibrating at. You've got people who, and if you've think about, the people that you've encountered in your life. When things change in your life, the people who you had, if you start to make changes in your life and say, okay, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm going to start doing this, like drinking buddies is a really good one, right? You and your buddies are used to drinking and partying every night. Somebody has a life event. They find someone that they fall in love with, they get married, and they have a baby. Next thing you know, they're not going out and drinking every night because their mindset, their perspective has changed. What happens to those people who used to be your best friends? They go away. They leave your life, either politely or with irritation, because you're no longer vibrating at the same frequency as them. And so this happens in all kinds of areas of your life. The frequency that you put out, the frequency that you create, is the frequency that you'll attract. And you'll know when people are vibrating at a resonant frequency because you'll feel that energy with them. And whether that's, a low vibrational energy when you're doing something like drinking, alcohol has a very depressive effect on the body generally, but it also has a depressive effect on your pineal gland and your ability to connect with other people. Essentially, specifically when it comes to alcohol, what happens is you have a lowering of that barrier between the conscious and the unconscious mind. And when people get really, 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 really drunk, they can end up having, big emotional things, crying, and just all these things start coming out because that barrier is no longer there. The conscious mind has been numbed to the point where it can't hold everything down. And so everything that the unconscious mind has been holding on alive neurologically comes out. And then the next morning, they don't have any memory of that because they weren't consciously aware because their conscious mind had taken a hike. That's a sort of a chemical form of hypnosis.
So can you let energy just flow through you?
Yes. So there are a number of ways that you can change and control the flow of your own energy, right? So you've got things like specific stones, like quartz crystal, lapis lazuli. Those are stones that have vibrational energies and frequencies that elevate your consciousness and can have a positive effect on your health. So you can use things, objects around you, because everything is vibrating at a specific frequency. You can use mindset to create the vibrational frequencies that you need to elevate yourself. And you can use environment. So you have things like walking in nature. Here's a fun fact for you. Trees have photoreceptors that essentially function the same way that our eyes do. They don't have eyes, but they have the physiological ability to see. This is when it comes to nature and like living beings like trees and plants and all that sort of thing, we really don't have a very good understanding yet of how they operate and how they work. So it's been shown in many, many studies that just things like walking in nature, touching trees and plants and things like that has a positive effect neurologically on the person who's doing that. On the flip side, things like living in a suburban area where you are stuck in a little box surrounded by little boxes and where there's nothing around you but concrete and asphalt has been shown to have a negative effect on your physiological vibration. So your environment can play a huge role in where you can get to neurologically, where you can get to with regard to your awareness of yourself. The same thing is true of your social environment, right? So they say that you are 95% a reflection of the top 5 people you spend time with. Now, I want you to think about the 5 people that you spend time with now, and then go back 10 years and think about the top 5 people you spent time with then. Notice the difference in where you are now and where you were then in relation to the people that you surrounded yourself with. This is, these things are things that have been shared as folk wisdom for centuries. The Bible talks about the companion of fools suffers much, things like that. That information has always been there. We're just getting to the point where we understand the science behind it. And so you can change your life. You can change the frequency you vibrate at if you, with intentionality, start changing the people that you surround yourself with. When it comes to things like business, the best way to become successful at a business is to put yourself in the space of successful business people. This goes right back to the frequency, energy, and vibration. If you're in the space of people who are vibrating successfully in business, you're going to pick up that vibration and you can become successful just by being in their presence, because you can absorb their energy and their energetic signatures that help them to get that success.
Can I ask you a quick question? So when someone is in a meditation hypnosis state, and they're in the state as is, and are they using all their senses at one point to just really put themselves in that situation?
That's a great question. When you're in a meditative or hypnosis state, there's 3 levels of, generally speaking. You have light trance, you have medium trance, and deep trance. Like 20% of people access light trance on their first time, 60% access medium, and 20% access deep. The more you practice it, the deeper you're able to go. What that really is a function of is the amount of sensory inputs that you are able to focus on that singular idea, that, like you say, so you can concentrate. The more you concentrate, the more you are able to concentrate. Does that make sense? It's a self-developing cycle. When you do hypnosis or meditation a lot, it becomes very, very easy for you to go into trance and to access that state very quickly. You can even do it yourself. If you do self-hypnosis, the best way to do it is to record yourself talking to yourself and then play the recording for yourself. You can do that and harmonize your frequency, your energy, through continued repetition. And you can get to the point where you have such a deep level of trance, such a deep level that you're really, all of the senses that you have outside you, your 5 senses, sight, touch, taste, smell, hear, those things are completely focused inward. And so the suggestions that you hear are really the only outward input. You can get to the point where people around you, things around you, really don't register at all. And people who are in light trance can be, disturbed or woken up, quote unquote. It's not sleep, but it's kind of like that. Hypnosis mimics the stages of sleep.
Okay, so when you're meditating / being hypnotized, you're doing this to yourself. You're actually putting yourself in a situation, as in like you bought a new car, you're opening the door, you're smelling the leather, you're feeling the engine of the car, like that.
Yes. So that is one way to use hypnosis, to create a realistic visualization where you take all of those external senses and you create a reality, because your unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between the past, the present, and the future. And so it also doesn't know what's the difference is between what is real and what is imagined, because all of that information is coming through your conscious mind into the unconscious mind. The conscious mind is what has access to your senses, and it then gives that information to your unconscious mind through a process of deletion, distortion, and generalization. And so when you create consciously a reality, you give it to the unconscious mind, and normally, in a normal sense, it goes through that process, deletion, distortion, generalization. Not all the information gets in, right? Because of those filters that are there. So when you do hypnosis, you can create that visualization, that image for yourself, or if you're doing it with someone else, they can create it for you. And all of it goes straight to the unconscious mind. So you get a complete visualization. You get the smells, you get the taste, you get the sounds, you get the things you would see in that moment. And that reality then can manifest itself in the physical, because if you create a belief for yourself about what is real, what is true, then your unconscious mind will start to act as though it is true. You will start to take on the behaviors. If you're specifically talking about wanting a new car, right? You go to the car lot and you look at the cars and you decide which one you want. And then you think about it. You're like, oh, that's the one I want. You can do hypnosis and put yourself, 6 months from now, having the car and feeling the pedal under your foot, and feeling the acceleration as your body is pulled back into the seat as you hammer down. All of those things, you can do that with hypnosis. You can create that visualization, and your body will automatically change, and your habits will start to change to create that reality around you. So you might notice, before you didn't know how you were going to afford it, and you have all of these things that you can do that suddenly there's opportunities everywhere. I never noticed that before. Oh, I can do this and make some quick cash. Oh, look at that. And before you know it, you're creating the situation that you need to create in order for that thing to become real in the physical.
Okay, so you could say like money comes to me in abundance, and then you find a dollar on the floor. You pick up the dollar, and you just say thank you to the basically the quantum realm of saying thank you for giving me this money, and then you just give more and get more.
So that is one way that you can use it. When it comes to NLP and hypnosis, the most effective is the most specific. So the more specific you can be about what you want and creating that reality, the more likely it is to become reality for you. So you can say, money is always coming to me, and that's a good affirmation to say. Absolutely. Because what's the opposite of that? Money's never coming to me. And what are most people unconsciously thinking when they're struggling with their finances? Oh, I never have enough money. Those beliefs are negatively impacting them.
And this works because everything is vibrating, correct?
Correct. Everything is vibrating at a frequency. So if you tap into the frequency of the thing that you want, you're going to draw it to you like a magnet. So the more specific you become, the more close you get to the actual vibrational frequency of the thing that you desire. And the more quickly and easily it will come to you.
I've always seen the body as like a temple, mind, body, and spirit. How do you keep your mind, body, and spirit all in sync with each other?
That's a great question. Keeping the mind, body, and spirit in sync with each other is something that is super, super important, because if you're out of sync, you have inner conflict, right? And that's something that everyone struggles with. We constantly have conflicted feelings about things. And by learning specific meditation practices, things like becoming aware of yourself, right? For instance, when I say something like, oh, I can't do that. When I become consciously aware that I've said that, the first thing that I do is I say, when did I decide that that was true for me? And I'm asking my unconscious mind to give me the answer. And a lot of times I will have a specific point in time that it brings up for me. I go, this is what was going on at that point. I remember now, this is what happened. And I decided this. And so that is an ongoing process where you can change the beliefs that you have and become more in harmony with the things that you want by just becoming aware of where and when you decided that you couldn't have it or you couldn't do it. And then asking yourself, what do I need to learn from that event that will allow me to have that in the present, that will allow me to get what I need to get? What learnings do I need from this that will allow me to change the future? And if you do that a few times, you'd be maybe surprised how quickly those answers can come to you. So doing things like that, becoming aware of yourself. I do a lot of things with nature as well. I like to get out and into nature and touch rocks and trees and center myself, because one of the things that is very, very strongly negatively impacting us is our devices. Things like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I mean, lots of people are talking about this now. It's pretty common knowledge, but those things hijack your system and give you little dopamine hits that create addiction and addiction patterns. And the things that you watch or do change your neurochemistry. So having specific times, especially around bedtime, when those things are keeping you from getting the rest that you need, stopping, creating a block for yourself so that you don't do those things when you go to bed, so that you have a restful, half hour at least of calm before you sleep, is a very, very helpful way of starting to reharmonize yourself and just getting that stillness because we are in a world where everything goes 100 miles an hour, right? We're constantly going here, going there, going here. Our vehicles go fast, our phones go fast. Everything that we do is, instantaneous. We've lost the exterior structures that created things like patience and stillness. And so we have to create spaces for that to exist, because our bodies and our minds need that to reharmonize themselves. So we can start by doing little things like that, where we just, normally I would pick up my phone and I would scroll Facebook for an hour before I go to sleep. Now, instead of that, I'm going to listen to a meditation and completely let go of the electronic devices. That's something that, especially when it comes to things like light pollution, things like that, I've been really focused on lately, is doing things like that. And then you have other things like there are devices such as vagus nerve stimulators that help your physiological body to reharmonize itself and to go from that stressed, heightened cortisol state to a relaxed state that it can recover in. So finding that balance between stressful activity and excitement and rest is probably the most crucial thing that I have done, because I also spent a lot of time trying to handle the problems of other people, right? Emotionally, physically, whatever it was. I would spend time on other people, but I wouldn't spend time on me. And when I say spend time on, I mean quality time, right? You may have heard of the 5 love languages, the concept, that people have different ways of loving and different ways they receive love. Well, quality time, regardless of whether that's quote unquote your love language or not, is something that is really, really important. And especially when it comes to yourself, because you need to take care of yourself first if you wish to take care of other people effectively. And so finding ways to spend quality time with yourself, doing things that relax you and calm you, allow you to become recentered and breathe, is a very, very, very good way, and something that I have added into my daily routine. I always take time for Sawyer, because if I don't take time for Sawyer, who's going to take time for him, right? I'm the only one who can live my life. No one else can live it for me. And I can't help people to the capacity that I want if my body is neglected, if my mind is neglected, if my spirit is neglected. So finding ways that you can spend specific amounts of time every day with yourself, harmonizing if you are, spiritually, believe, reading things that edify you, that cause you to think in better ways and to learn things that basically you read something and you pause and you go, I need to think about how that applies to me, right? There's lots of things that you can read that create that thoughtfulness. And in that thoughtfulness, you have stillness, you have calmness, and you have a connection with yourself, because the things that you hear inside are not you. The suggestions, the feelings that your unconscious mind gives to you, those are not you. Your unconscious mind is not even you. Those are all things that you evaluate, that you can change and that you can hear, but those are not you. So you can get into habits of quality time with yourself and all of the parts of yourself and allow yourself to come into more harmonious vibration. Does that
Sawyer,
answer your question?
what does spiritual health mean to you?
Spiritual health to me means doing specific meditation practices that will elevate my consciousness. So I'm a Christian. I study the Bible and I go to church. Those are specific ways. Another way that I think is overlooked and neglected is connecting with your higher self, your higher consciousness. We've talked about the conscious, the unconscious. This is a concept that specifically comes from ancient Huna, and basically they say there's 3 levels of consciousness. You have your higher conscious, your unconscious, and your conscious mind. The higher conscious mind is kind of abstract and really difficult for the conscious mind to understand. Finding specific ways or taking specific classes or events, doing things that help you to connect in a organized way with all 3 levels of your consciousness is something that I do on a regular basis. My Neuromasters Academy has a Huna course that I take every time it comes up. It's every few months. And in that, they go through a specific process of connecting with the higher conscious mind and bringing harmony into all 3 minds together. That's something that I really, really highly recommend for people to do, because the first time you experience it, it is an experience. Let me tell you, it's kind of funny because we do these things without any, you're not taking any psychedelics or anything like that. But you can have some very, very vivid visual experiences if you're connecting in a purposeful way with yourself. So that's one way that I suggest. And then on a daily basis, like I said, reading, meditating, prayer. Prayer is a very good one. And at the core of that is gratitude. Because when it comes to vibrational frequencies, your gratitude changes your state emotionally. This is something that I practice with my children. If they're in a state where they're unhappy and they're upset, and it's because they don't have something that they want, they're in a scarcity mindset and they're vibrating at a scarcity vibrational frequency. The antidote to that is to stop and say, okay, what are 3 things that I can be grateful for right now? How can I genuinely express gratitude for at least 3 things? And just the pause. And it's amazing, like spiritually, emotionally, if you stop and go, what do I have that I should be expressing gratitude for right now? Ask yourself that, and then say those things out loud. You create a connection at the quantum level with the creator because you express that gratitude for those things that you've been given, and your whole system changes. Your whole state changes because you get out of that state of not having enough and into that state where there is abundance. And that expression of gratitude, that acknowledgement that you do have things that you have been given that you can be grateful for, completely changes you. And from a spiritual perspective, your energy that you're vibrating at will change automatically as a result of that.
That makes a lot of sense, Sawyer. And this is the part of the show. It's called the Friday Mindset part of the show. I want to dig into your journey, your experiences, and some moments that shaped you into who you are today. Sawyer, what's been one of the best pieces of advice you've ever received?
Best pieces of advice I've ever received. So one of the most important parts of my journey has been learning. It sounds like a catchphrase, but the depth behind it has been critical to my success. And the phrase is, if I can't, I must. And if I must, I can. Just think about that for a second. Okay, every time you say, I can't do that. Well, if I can't, then I must. And if I must do it, I can. Essentially, it takes something that is a negative and gives you the emotional and mental space to problem solve. You can take any problem. I can't make this thing happen. Well, if I can't make it happen, then I must. And if I must make it happen, then I can. Everything in your life, every problem in your life, if you use that little frame, this going back to the frameworks thing, right? This is just a little tiny framework that I use constantly for myself, for my children, for people around me. I don't necessarily, language it that way all the time, but that is the operating principle behind my ability to problem solve. Because here's the thing, when you are saying I can't, you're giving a command to your unconscious mind, right? Instead of that, if you ask the question, how can I? Then you go from a state of certainty that you cannot do the thing, cannot have the thing, whatever, to a state of curiosity. And only from a state of curiosity can you find new solutions. Because what got you to this point won't get you to the point you want to get to. If it could, you would already be there. So you need new information. You need new resources to help you to get from where you are to where you want to go. And so that state of curiosity is critical to finding that new information.
Wow, that is really powerful. That state of curiosity in your mind can really shift your perspective. So I got to ask you, there's always something significant in someone's childhood that shaped them into who they are today. What is something significant from your childhood that shaped you into who you are today?
Something significant from my childhood that shaped me into who I am today. That's a great question, Matthew. The very powerful things that I learned early in life was that if I keep going, if I keep trying, and if I continue the struggle, no matter how much struggling there is, eventually I can succeed. 100% of failures occurred because the person who failed gave up before success. And I was very blessed when I was very young to have parents who continually encouraged me to keep trying, to keep working at it. The more you try, the more you learn. And our entire human experience is based around that concept where you learn so much more through your quote-unquote failures than you do through your success, right? If you try something and you succeed the first time, what did you learn? Well, you learned that you can do it, and that's it. If you try and you do not succeed, you have to go and look for more information. And every time that you don't succeed, you find more and more information. So by the time you do succeed, you've become an expert, right? The amount of failure, again, I'm using that in quotes because really all it is delayed success. I like to use the words, success is inevitable, time is the only variable. Or if you want to put it another way, you're going to succeed whether you want to or not. You have no choice in the matter. If you start telling yourself things like that every day, you're going to start, seeing those things show up in your life. And I was very blessed to have people around me that encouraged me to continue trying. And when I was young, I used hard work. That was my thing. And now that I have frameworks, that success is that much easier because I can change the frame and ask the questions that I need to ask right away to get the information to help me to succeed that much faster. But growing up, I learned how to work hard and to try hard. I was in gymnastics. I sang in a choir. I got to go to places like Europe, and that was because I kept trying until I succeeded. And so that was one of the most powerful things I can do. And if I just for a moment speak to the parents out there, saying "can you" is asking your child a question. When you want them to do something, say "you can." So if you need them to pick up their toys, instead of saying, "Can you pick up your toys for me?" switch that around and say, "You can pick up the toys now," because you are empowering them with a success mindset by changing those two words, just flipping them front to back. You are now giving them the empowerment of that success because they hear that and they think to themselves, I can do that. And so you take away the uncertainty of whether they can or not. When their success is assumed, they're going to see more and more evidence of that in their life. And you can do the same thing for yourself as an adult, but it is so much more powerful to a child who doesn't have the ability to decide that for themselves yet. They are mirroring their parents' neurology. So by you giving them that, you are creating what will in the future be a child who is full of certainty in themselves and is capable of achieving great things because they believe that they can.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's a great takeaway for a lot of the parents out there. And having that never giving up mentality, it's so powerful because all those failures you put on that utility belt and you take it with you along your journey. And every step of the way, I mean, you just keep on growing. And
That's right.
it's so powerful when you take all your failures with you and you use them throughout your journey. I really want to ask you, Sawyer, what kind of legacy are you going to leave?
It is something that, so everyone has what we call their why, right? There's the reason behind everything that they do. That is their drive and their energy. My why is my legacy. I want my children, I have two little children, 5 and 8 years old right now. Everything that I am doing, everything that I've been building and creating, especially over the last couple of years with more intent and more consciousness, is to give them a future in which they can be successful at anything that they decide they want to do. And so my legacy is to create my piece of the world in which success is always inevitable and people have the belief that they can do anything, that they can achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve, and that they are resilient in the face of so-called failures, because any experience can become a positive experience if you are able to give it a new and empowering meaning. So the things that you thought were negative experiences from the past, if you realize just how important they were to your eventual success, they become a positive by default. And so my legacy, the one that I envision and the one that I want, is for all of the people in my sphere of influence to, at some level, realize that and use that for their eventual success.
Now, with that being said, what has been the biggest driving factor for success in your career?
In my career, the biggest driving factor has been the desire to help people and empower them. See, when I come from a construction background. For the first 15 years of my life, at least, I was working. I did everything from plumbing to operating heavy equipment to building all of those things, and basically anything you can think of in the construction field, I did. I also had jobs in which I helped people. I was a firefighter, volunteer firefighter, lifeguard, things like that. And those things I felt called to from a very early age. I became a lifeguard when I was 15, and that was sort of the start of my career with professionally helping people. When I discovered NLP and hypnosis. I kid you not. I took this course, right? Going back to the beginning when you asked, how we got here. I watched this video on the Energy Cube and I signed up for the course immediately. I did not know what it was. I did not even have a public conception of what hypnosis was. Like, I literally, if you had asked me to describe it, I could not. No clue. All I knew was that whatever that guy was teaching in that video was something that I needed to know. And at the time, I was in a very, I wouldn't say dark, I was in a very challenging place in my life. I was separated. I was in the middle of the divorce proceedings, and it was a very trying time for me personally. And so I was looking for something to fill the gap because I knew that there were solutions, I knew that there were answers, and I knew that I didn't have them. Additionally, I knew that if I could find them, that I could change everything that I had been experiencing in my life. And so I was open. I was more open than I'd ever been to new experiences and new learnings. And so when you vibrate at that frequency, when you're ready, those things come to you, those answers come to you. And so this video pops up on Facebook and I watch it. I'm like, okay, I'm in. I signed up. I remember having really no clear understanding of what I was buying when I signed up for the courses. The lady was talking with me about the pricing options and stuff. And I literally was like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. That's fine. I know I need to get there. And so I go, and my first course was actually a hypnosis practitioner course called Rapid Hypnosis, and with Neuromasters Academy. I kid you not, the end of the first day, this was a 3-day course, end of the first day, I was so changed internally that I was thinking, okay, if I can make this kind of change inside myself in just one day, how much more can I change with the coming courses? And my second thought was, how does everyone not know how to do this? Why is this not being taught? How come I've never heard of this before? Right? This is so amazing that everybody should be able to use it. Like the speed of implementation is ridiculous. And so by the end of the second day, I publicly stated that I was making a career change. At that point, I was working up on the North Slope of Alaska in the oil fields. I said, I'm going to do this as a career. I'm going to help people because I know that there are people like me out there who, if they have the tools, will make the changes. Just like me. I was looking, I was ready, and when the information came along, I immediately implemented it. I immediately took it and I immediately made changes, and I saw the changes in myself almost instantaneously. And so I knew that I couldn't be the only person in that place emotionally. And so I said, I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do. I want to help people to learn the things that I have learned and to use those tools to change their own lives the way that it's already changing mine. And that was, like I said, 2 days in, and I haven't looked back. It's been an amazing, amazing ride because I get to help people every single day, every time I do a session with someone, every time I interact with someone on the street. It doesn't matter if we're, in a formal session. I get to help people to realign themselves every time I interact with them. I get the opportunity to change their state and to give them a positive mindset that will help them to be more successful in their lives. And that's what I love about what I do.
And to the listeners out there, all of Sawyer's information will be in the description down below. If you resonate with that, please reach out to him. And a lot of people out there are just, their minds are so cluttered with so much different stuff happening at once. And if you have that problem, reach out to Sawyer in the description down below. And Sawyer, the show we're on is called Every Day is Friday. Friday, it has a special energy, whether it's freedom, excitement, or just feeling of accomplishment after a long week. Sawyer, I want to hear from you. What does Friday mean to you?
Well, that's a great question, Matthew. Friday to me means that sense of readiness, right? Because Friday means that the weekend is coming and everybody is ready for the weekend. whether you have all your ducks in a row or not, you're done with the week and the work week and all the stress, and you're ready for things to be different. And to me, that's exactly, like, your name exemplifies that so beautifully. And for my life, that's how I live every day. I take the lessons that I had and I leave the emotions behind. And so I'm always looking forward. A lot of people spend their time looking back at the past, thinking, oh, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go back there. And that's true, emotionally, physically, whatever. They have experiences that they are walking away from while they're looking at them. But not until you turn and look towards the future, towards where you want to go, can you find true success and true fulfillment. And so I think that your idea, Every Day is Friday, perfectly exemplifies that, because it is that turning from the things that you had in the past that you didn't like to the future where you want to go, where you want to be, and what you want to do.
Every
And
day is
everyone,
Friday.
yes, every day is Friday, man.
Yeah, it's a mindset that anything
Everyone
is
can have that.
possible and like new beginnings, like you're saying.
Exactly. And everyone can have that mentality if they just do a little bit of training. For people who really want to dive deep, I highly recommend doing courses like Neuromasters Academy courses that teach you the science, all of the linguistics that you can use. But even if you're someone who just wants to see some changes in your life, you're unhappy, whether it's with the relationships that you've had or the job that you have, you can get really fast changes by working with someone who is a professional in the field. It's just like a coach, a physical coach. When you're doing strength training, if you haven't done strength training, you don't know what you need to do. You can go in and exercise and you can throw the weights around, but you don't know how to create measurable progress. Whether it's with me or someone else, I think that everyone should have a person that they work with at least on a semi-regular basis to help them find a way to measure their progress. And because those people are trained to give you those results fast and to allow you to see those results in real time. It's an amazing thing. I am so grateful that I found these techniques and this neurolinguistic programming field. And I work, even having done all the work that I've done, I still work with people every day. I have a group, a network of fellow practitioners, and we get together and we do techniques with each other, and we check in on a regular basis and say, okay, what are you struggling with this week? What can we do to help you get where you need to go? And so if me as a professional has that interaction with other professionals on a regular basis, how much more someone who hasn't had the training, who doesn't have the mindset tools, because I'm always using them for myself, but there are always blind spots. There are always unknown unknowns. And working with someone who is able to ferret those things out and bring them to your conscious awareness is absolutely invaluable. I highly recommend it for everyone.
And that's exactly why I started my coaching program for helping people from 0 to 100 podcasts. If anyone's out there is interested in that, I'm doing that, helping people start. I mean, it's my failures will be your successes, and I'm there along the journey with you. That's what it's all about. Is there anything else you want to leave the listeners? You want to leave the listeners with anything powerful?
Well, I love that, that idea, what you just said there with 0 to 100 podcasts, using your failures to make people success. Here's the thing. You can model the success of other people. Remember, we talked about earlier in the podcast about being in the vibrational energy of successful business people in order to become more successful in your business. Get with people who raise your vibrational frequencies. That is one of the fastest changes that you can make, because that doesn't require you to know anything necessarily. All you're doing is getting out of the vibrational frequencies that you've been sitting in with the people that you've been with into new vibrational frequencies with new people who can give you new insights. New insights, new information will lead to new results. And so in order to get where you want to go, you've got to change what you're doing now. And one of the fastest and easiest ways to do that is to seek out new people who have something that you want, who live a life that you want to have, something like that. Find those people and cultivate relationships with them so that you can spend quality time around them. And that will automatically move the needle in the direction you want to go.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And Sawyer, I really have one more question for you, because it's in the back of my mind. I mean, how were the Alaskan Highland Games different from the original ones?
Oh, well, that's a great question, actually. Probably the biggest difference would be that we have what we call the Alaska salmon toss. You've got a 45-pound rubber salmon you have to throw as far as you can. The other games don't have that. from a traditional standpoint, it's a very traditional Highland Games. In fact, the Alaska Scottish Highland Games is one of the premier games in the nation now, especially when it comes to like the number of athletes that compete. We have athletes from all over the U.S. and sometimes even from one of my friends came up from Canada this year to compete, and they're very traditional. In fact, I talked to someone 2 years ago who lives. She was from Great Britain, and she said that the way that we do the games is very, very authentic and very deeply resonant. She was she was very impressed with how authentic our games were, because she's from there. She's seen the games back home from Britain, and she said that she was really impressed with that. From that standpoint, I'd say we're very traditional, but yeah, we do have a couple of different events. So the traditional Highland Games, there's 7 to 9 events. The caber toss, everyone knows about, right? That's where you're throwing the great big log end over end, and that one's a fun one. But there are actually a whole bunch of other events that they all involve throwing heavy weights for distance, either for height or as far away as you can. And so those are all traditional events that every Scottish Highland Games has, and ours is no exception, with the exception of the salmon.
Now, for the listeners, could you unpack that a little bit more? I mean, what was it like competing in the Highland Games in Alaska?
Yeah, so I actually, when I did it a week ago, it was a really funny story, because I had gotten bitten by a huge dog, this Anatolian Shepherd, the night before the games. Like, this is literally 8 hours before competition. This dog comes up and bites the back of my calf, like brings me to the ground. It was not fun. And a lot of people would have said, okay, that's it, I'm out, because I literally could not walk. I could not put any pressure on my calf at all. It was excruciatingly painful. I was able to use my techniques, my skills, my knowledge, and by the next morning, even though I couldn't put any weight on it when I got out of the car and walked to the field, hobbled to the field, within 2 hours, I was able to put weight on it and compete, and I actually won every single one of my events to sweep my division. Having that mindset training was absolutely critical to that success, because you are always, like I said, hypnotizing yourself to your success or to your failure. And so I used all the techniques that I have, all the knowledge that I have, to focus my healing energy on that part of my body, and to remove the pain from that part of the body, so that it would be functional and I could compete. And the whole experience was just phenomenal, because every event that I had, not only was I able to compete in it, but the way that the organization of events was such that I didn't have to put weight on it at first. I was able to progressively increase the amount of pressure and weight that I had on it, so it gave my body more time to prepare itself. And that was something that I just manifested. I set an intention, and I said, okay, this is what I need to happen. We don't have control over what events are when. The judge picks that. It's a function of the judge deciding and what areas are open for the competition at the time, depending on what other groups are doing. So that all just worked out beautifully in my favor, and it was just a fantastic experience, because I was able to overcome the personal problems that I had in the moment, and I set several PRs for myself, which was really fun as well, because having that kind of odds stacked against you, it's like, all right, well, I'm gonna go out there and I'm going to win regardless. I told people that morning, oh yeah, I'm here to win, as I'm hobbling around on the field. Okay, all right, bud. But getting that was just such an amazing thing for me, because it was just a reminder of how powerful this information is, and how I can use it and change my reality in real time, despite whatever is it. I didn't say, oh, I can't do it. I didn't quit, and I competed to the best of my ability, and it worked out fantastic for me. So I highly recommend it. If you have never been to a Highland Games, it's very entertaining. Go find one. There's one very close to you. The U.S. has them all over the place. So yeah, that's a great thing to do. Great entertainment, great fun.
Sawyer, what does those competitions of the Highland Games teach you about yourself?
That is something that I think everyone should ask themselves. For me personally, what it taught me was that as much as I talk to myself about myself, as positively as I talk to myself, I always have more ability than I think I do. And this games in particular showed me that, right? Because even though I was saying, oh yeah, I'm going to win this, I did not think that I could win every single event in the competition. And so I think the most important thing that it taught me was that the only thing that limits me and my abilities is up here, right here in your mind. You tell yourself no, you stop yourself. I think it was Marcus Aurelius said, you suffer more in your mind than you ever will in reality. The things that you tell yourself, even me, who's done so much mindset work, I was still surprised by how well I was able to perform, because I still have limiting beliefs that I have to find and remove about what I'm capable of. And I think that it was a really great reminder for me that as much as I've done and as far as I've gone, I still have lots of room to expand and grow, because there is all that reserve that I didn't know I had that just materialized for me in the moment when I needed it.
And I know a lot of listeners got a lot of value out of this, and it's been an awesome conversation. I appreciate you being here, Sawyer.
Yeah, it's been really amazing. Thank you for having me. I'd love to come back and discuss some more stuff sometime. Like, you've got a great podcast here, and I think that the value that we bring together and the way that we interact is just phenomenal. I've really enjoyed being in your vibrational energy, man. It's been great. Thank you.
I really do appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your stories and experiences. And to everyone listening, stay tuned for more amazing stories on Every Day is Friday. If you enjoyed this, make sure you follow, share, and keep that Every Day is Friday mindset going. Stay inspired and make every day feel like Friday. Until next time, everybody.